A bunch of years ago when I worked at Murray's Cheese in New York, we got this really angry phone call from a customer. She'd been sent cheese by a friend and she was calling to tell us that the cheese was moldy. We're all running around trying to find her record and find her order and figure out what we sent her and where we messed up. And finally we pulled up her order and we saw that she had been sent blue cheese. What makes a blue cheese is that it's full of mold. This is the Blue Gateway. There are some blue cheeses that have little blips and dots of mold. There are some blue cheeses that are more gray than white. There are some where the mold isn't really blue at all. It's more like a bright green color. Some are buttery and smearable, more like a brie, and others are dense and fudgy. If you know what you're looking at, all of those things are clues to what kind of blue you have in front of you and what you can expect the eating is going to be like. The flavors of blue cheese are all over the wheel, but the commonalities are these: fungal, mushroomy notes, salt, and very discernible signs of overripeness. Blues gone bad aren't just ammoniated, they have a strong whiff of acetone. Think nail polish remover. Blues are another great example where knowing a little bit about cheese making will actually help you figure out what your cheese is going to taste like. Immediately after a wheel of blue cheese is formed, it turns blue on the outside. But it's not until the cheese is pierced and air can get inside that the blue mold will start to grow. In order to make a blue cheese, you have to introduce blue mold spores to the milk or the curd during cheese making. That's usually a blue mold called Penicillium roqueforti, so think about the famous blue cheese Roquefort. Sometimes it's a mold called Penicillium glaucum, but whatever. Anyway, you gotta get the mold in. And then once it's there, it's only gonna grow once it's in contact with oxygen. Why does that matter? If you've got a wet, spongy, buttery textured cheese and you poke holes in it, the curd just kind of collapses, right? Those veins of mold don't ever have a chance to really form. And so you wind up with a style that people refer to as a blue brie. Cambozola is the most famous example. You can see here, it's cream enriched and it's squishy and wet. It doesn't have a lot of blue mold. And accordingly, it's gonna have a milder, sweeter flavor. Meanwhile, then there's another cheese, take Stilton, for example. Colston Bassett Stilton, made in England, is aged for many weeks before the wheels are pierced. That means the cheese has a chance to develop flavors that don't have anything to do with blue mold or salt. Those flavors develop, then the wheel is pierced, then it starts to become a blue cheese. I have a friend who calls this more cheese than blue. So my point is that blue flavor can be all over the map, and most of us have had really crappy blue cheese. Pre-crumbled, pre-cupped stuff that they sell for salad is usually the worst of the worst. It's metallic and it's salty. So even if you're a blue cheese hater, I really encourage you to think about blue as having a spectrum of flavor and explore things on the milder, more approachable end. Let's check it out. While all blues have flavors of salinity and mushroom, the creamier, less bluey varieties are more like a savory yogurt, sometimes with a fatty coconut edge. Look for blue brie styles. Cambozola is readily available. This one is called Cambozola Black, because it's got this black ash rind. Getting into slightly more intense flavors, look for the Stilton types or the natural rind blues. These are blues that have a dusty brown rind on the outside, and they're gonna have more of the licorice flavors to them. Then we get into the classic American blues, which are generally wrapped in foil, rindless. The flavor pops, the salt is more concentrated. One of my favorites is Point Reyes out of Northern California. And then finally, at the most intense end of the flavor spectrum, if you're really looking for something that's gonna make your mouth burn a little bit, a great one to look for is the Spanish mixed milk cheese Valdeón, Pico de Valdeón or Valdeón. There is no style more than blue cheese that reminds me of a family. Every single one has one very visible thing in common, but each cheese is truly its own character. There are young, creamy, pasteurized blues. There are dense, aged, raw milk blues. There are sweet, mellow ones. There are crumbly, fierce ones. They truly run the gamut of flavor. We most often think of blues as cheeses to crumble on top of a salad. I will also tell you they make mean burger and steak toppers as well. Where you can really experiment with pairing and enjoy the magic of opposites attracting is when you start to pair blues with sweet, viscous things. So they are always going to be saltier, and generally speaking, their flavor is more intense than the average cheese. Contrast that with sweet, viscous dessert wines, honey, or chocolate. All of them make very happy bedfellows with blues. The whole family.